Greetings and welcome. We are in Junior English, and our expectation now is to introduce you to the concept of transcendentalism, and more particularly the important transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson. Now, Emerson is of course going to be crucial in the thoughts of American political life, literary life, spiritual life. But we're going to call him a transcendentalist, and I'm like, dude, what does that even mean? That's a strange term for me. You see it on your hymnal page, I believe, on 360 there. Probably there's some pages there that you are expected to read already about transcendentalism. So let's begin, first of all, with a quick summary of history. When we talk about history, one of the things we do, it's kind of a game we play, is to draw a little timeline that looks something like that. It looks like something out of math class. Are you familiar with this concept? And then you put a zero right in the center. And then you talk about events that are before the Common Era, BCE, and you talk about events that are what we today call Common Era, or AD, okay? Right? And then we divide this timeline of events up into 100-year segments that we call what? Centuries. A 100-year segment, right? Centuries. So for example, right now as I'm giving this lecture, it's what? 2014, right? Which means it's been 2014 years since the zero mark, which was what? In Western timeline, what is the zero mark? What is that, by the way? Do we know? We celebrate it every December, don't we? Christmas is understood as the birth of Christ, right? So we will talk about the birth of Christ as zero, okay? Now we can go the other way as well. But like in mathematics, the negative numbers count down, right? So in other words, we're out here, for example, at 399 BCE. It's a famous date. It's the date 300 years before Christ's birth when the great philosopher Socrates is killed. He's executed because he made the wrong people mad, okay? But we kind of count down. For those of you in your sophomore year who can remember studying Shakespeare's little ditty called Julius Caesar, you know about a cat that got jacked in the back. What year did that happen? 44 BCE. 44 years before the birth of Christ. So you can kind of notice we count down to zero, and then we start counting up. Here we are, 2014, and we call this the what? 21st century, correct? Right? 21st century. By the way, that's kind of how we write it, right there, okay? We write the number 21 with the big C around it. So, for example, watch how we can play this game. Columbus sails the ocean blue in 1492. Remember that one? 1492, right? Got me? Columbus sails the ocean blue in 1492. Well, now that's interesting. 1492 is what century? Well, before you answer, take a look. If we are in 2014, the year, but we are in the 21 century, 21st century, we just go up a number, don't we, to talk about the century, correct? So if we are in 1492, we are in what century? You're right, that's the 15th century. See how that works? Now, I have students that say, dude, that is so confusing to me. Like, if it's 1492, why ain't it the 14th century? Simple answer. We start with zero, don't we? The birth of Christ. And then we go up, 50, 60, 70, 80, 98, 99, 100, correct? This is the first 100 years. So we got to call this the what? First century, right? 150, 180, 190, 199, 200, right? This is what we call what? The second century, even though the numbers are 150, right? See how that works? Does that make sense? So here we are out at 2014, and we're at the 21st century. Got me? Now wait a minute. If we are looking at Ralph Waldo Emerson, and more particularly that page of biography on 365, there's some dates there. His birth date and his death date. Suggestion, an inside hit. I always recommend pick a common, easy date to remember. Usually one that ends with a zero. Do you got me? So if you look at the birth date, death date of Emerson, what's a working date for you that you could put on this timeline where you want to put this cat? What's a good working date? What would you say? 1800. That's an easy one, right? So let's go ahead and put it up on our timeline. 1800, which is what century? Now see, here again, I'm at 20, I go to 21. I'm at 14, I go to 15. I'm at 18, I go to what? 19th century. Very good. 19th century, right? So 1800 is the year we're going to give Emerson, right? Now think about this for a second. We already know something about these dates. Because Tommy and his pals said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What is that document that the old man was just quoting? Does anybody know what that is? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is the document we call the Declaration of Independence. In many ways, it's the founding document of America. What year did Tommy Jefferson and his pals write that thing? Do you remember? What year do we constitute the birth of America? We know it happens when we shoot off fireworks and eat lots of hot dogs and stuff on what day of the year? It's always on what holiday? July the 4th, isn't it? But what year was that July the 4th that was the most important year in American history? There's one year in American history more important than any of the others, and we call it the beginning of our nation's history. What year was that? 1776. Right? 1776. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Take a look at your timeline of Emerson now and recognize Emerson, just a few years, he's living during the same time, huh? Right? See how that works? So now we're able to kind of qualify Emerson's life as being a writer of the 19th century, right? Very close to the time of the beginning of American history, okay? And he is a transcendentalist. Now, wait a minute, dude, what does that term even mean? Transcendentalist. Good question. I'm glad you asked it. I'm going to go ahead now and remove this stuff off my whiteboard, and let's try to now define transcendentalism. Now, when we're, again, working with Emerson, we're working with what we call an American transcendentalist of the 19th century. Hurrah! See, I can use that term now that you kind of get a sense of where we mean it. What's our date for Emerson? 1800. Let's just call it that. By the way, I always like to do this on the timeline. I always like to ask, how long before I was born? So, for example, if Emerson is 1800, how long was it before you were born? See? So you can write that down on your timeline real quickly and then do some quick mathematics. Roughly, we're talking about how long ago? Roughly, right, yeah, a couple hundred years ago, you'd say, right? Okay, 1800, we're in 2114, right? See, right? So a couple of hundred years ago, this cat named Ralph Waldo Emerson lived, and he was an American transcendentalist. Now, let's talk about what that term even means, transcendentalism. The way to understand this concept that's fairly easy is to come up with a word picture. So I'm going to work on my whiteboard with a word picture. I just want you to write it down in your notes. I think it will make sense to you. The way to do this is you're going to put two boxes together, side by side. You want to make the boxes large enough that you can write some information inside of them. Okay? Above the first box, you're going to write the word forms or images. All right? Forms or images. And above the second box, you're going to write formless or concepts or ideas. All right? Okay. Now, we are working with a very famous concept, argument, that was actually created by the great Greek philosopher Socrates. Remember when I wrote his date up here of 399? He's a famous Greek philosopher. By your senior year, you will study more about this great thinker named Socrates. Socrates had a student named PlayDoh, P-L-A-T-O. PlayDoh was a great writer, and he wrote us dialogues that told us about this very strange cat named Socrates, who liked to make arguments sitting at the middle of the mall at the fountain. Do you know what I mean by the mall at the fountain at the mall? Have you been to one of these wretched places where people shop? Ugh. And then in the very center, there's the big fountain. Socrates likes to sit there, and he likes to talk with people and ask them questions. Like, for example, PlayDoh comes walking by with his best pal, and his pal is carrying an Abercrombie bag. And Socrates doesn't know this kid. And Socrates says to the kid, "Why Abercrombie?" And the kid looks up and is like, "Screw you, old man, I can wear whatever I want." Socrates is an old man. And Socrates goes, "No, you can wear whatever you want. I'm just asking you a question. Why Abercrombie? Like, why Abercrombie as opposed to Walmart down the street from the mall? Or as opposed to the thrift store further down the street from the Walmart? Or as opposed to the dumpster in the back of the thrift store? How come, why Abercrombie?" And the kid gets pissed and walks off. He's like, "Screw you, old man." But the other kid stays. That's PlayDoh. And he's like, "Dude, what's up with that? That wasn't very nice. You don't even know my pal." Socrates is like, No, I wasn't trying to be rude. I just asking him a real question. Why Abercrombie? As opposed to something else. PlayDoh says, "Why wear Abercrombie too? What are you getting mad about Abercrombie for?" Socrates says, "I'm not mad at Abercrombie, but I got this idea. I may be wrong, but I think I'm right," he says. That people wear Abercrombie so they can say, "I wear Abercrombie and you don't. I wear Abercrombie and you don't." It's about money, which equals power, which makes you feel like somehow you're better than other people because you can drop $135 on a t-shirt. That, by the way, is made in the same place where the $5 t-shirt is made. You do know that, right? They're all made in the same place, right? Tragically, usually by child laborers, right? See how that works? A little bit later, PlayDoh's at home. His mama walks in his bedroom. He's got these big garbage bags, and he's dumping all of his stuff inside a garbage bag. His mom's like, whoa, what are you doing, son? He's like, I just decided I don't need to wear Abercrombie anymore. I'm done with it. I'm just going to start wearing cheap clothes. I don't need to wear the expensive stuff anymore. She's like, whoa. We dropped thousands of dollars on those clothes. What's up with you? And he's like, no, I was at the mall talking to this old man. She's like, what are you talking about, talking to an old man? No, at the mall, at the fountain, at the mall. This old man, he made me think. In 399 BCE, 400 years before the birth of Christ, the city of Athens gets a little bit torqued at this guy named Socrates. They bring him to trial for being a bad guy because he makes kids think. Right, he makes them think too much, and they condemn him to death by drinking poison. Why? Because he made the wrong people mad. Got me? Right before he dies, by the way, Socrates says something very interesting. He says, the unexamined life is not worth living. The unexamined life is not worth living. Oh, that is an interesting quote. I've had students that write that quote down and stick it next to their bed. And then in the morning when they wake up, they see that quote. The unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates points out, most of us go through our whole life and never once even ask, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? And if somebody challenges us to ask that question, we often can get really mad. Dude, leave me alone, right? Socrates is going to challenge us right before he dies. He's going to challenge us, isn't it time to start asking about your life? Why? Remember when you were young, you did this all the time. Dude, if you hang out with young kids, you know this. We got to go somewhere. Why? We got to do this. Why? When you're young. But by the time you get into school, what is it that school's really good at? Teaching you to just shut up and do whatever you're told. Think about how it works at Worland High School. The bell. Ding, 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 ding. We all get up and walk like zombies to the next room. It's like a holding pen for animals. And we all sit down until ding, ding, get up. I teach seniors who have never once asked the question, why? Why? Like, what's the point of it all? Seriously? You've been doing this thing for years. And Socrates asks, when are you going to ask why? Maybe now is the time. Socrates is sitting at the mall with PlayDoh before he dies. and he has an observation that we will use our little whiteboard drawing to try to explain. Socrates says, you know, it's fascinating. In the first box here, let's put a beautiful body. Write the words, beautiful body. Are you familiar? Drop dead gorgeous person. How about this? How about this? Let's call it a beautiful Victoria's Secret model. And of course, Socrates is talking to a bunch of guys, and so he's like, here, let me just show you. And so he gets up with them, and he walks into the bookstore at the mall, and they walk to the calendar section, and there, sure enough, the Sports Illustrated swimsuit model edition calendar is right there, and he says to the guys, hey, let's look at this beautiful woman. You've seen these women before with the half-open, seductive mouth, the eyes that are so alluring, and all. Guys in high school like to put pictures of these girls in their locker, which is really funny because if any Victoria's Secret model ever walked up to one of those guys in her underwear, he would just pee himself and run away. Let's just say what it is, right? Okay, no girls or no guys going to be able to, be so confident, but right, we stick them up. But Socrates says something really interesting about this beautiful body. He says, think about this for a second. Has the thought occurred to you that there will come a point when that beautiful swimsuit model will show up at the pool and she'll take off her little robe and everybody's going to go, whoa, 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 babe, put it back on. Nobody wants to see that anymore. Right? Why come? Because, well, sooner or later, what do we know about beautiful bodies? Well, they all sag and bag, don't they? Right? So if you get old enough, right? That beautiful swimsuit model, she gets one of these thingies. Do you know this? These thingies right here. Or sometimes it's this, right? This thingy right here, right? So like, for example, when we used to take my Ash to church, she always wanted to touch the old lady's thingies. Hey, I just want to, it hangs way down here. The skin hangs way down. And you can see the light through it. And right here, it's, start hanging. Everything starts sagging. And for those of you that go, oh, that's so gross. What do you mean so gross? Hey, if you live long enough, guess what? No matter how many Buns of Steel videos you do, and no matter how much you work out, right? Sooner or later, what do we know about the human body? It's gonna what? Yeah, it's gotta deteriorate, doesn't it, right? It's just the way that it is. What would it be like? Some of you have never thought about this. What would it be like to be a Victoria's Secret model who realizes there will come a point when people will look at you and go, oh, hey. When you define your value by the way you look, right? And you get paid millions of dollars to look stunning. But to know in the back of your mind that in just a few years, nobody will look at you that way. No matter how many operations you do, no matter how much workout you do, people are going to look at you and go, oh, that's kind of pathetic. Ooh, what's that got to be like in the mind of a model? What's that got to be like? But here's Socrates' point that's even more fascinating. The thing about beautiful bodies is that they all have a tendency to sag and bag and go away. But one thing that we know in the future is that there will still be this thing that we will call beauty. Beauty. Right? There will be a new swimsuit model. Correct? When the current swimsuit model is so old nobody wants to see it anymore, there will still be swimsuit models. There will still be beautiful people. The concept of beauty will still be around, even though the swimsuit model's beauty has kind of gone away. Do you agree? But question, what is beauty? Like, what is that? I want to be able to touch that. What is beauty? Some of you will say, yeah, that's not the way it works. Watch this one. How about this one? I can do this really fast now that you're starting to get an idea of what he's gesturing towards. For example, I had a student that came into me once, our top math student, and he said, Mr. McGee, I don't believe in God. I went, oh, okay. And he said, aren't you going to ask me why? And I went, oh, okay. And he went like this. And I went, God is a table? And he went, no, I can do that. If you can do that for me with God, then I'll believe in God. I don't believe in God. And I went, okay, but watch this. And I went to the whiteboard, and I asked him, what is this? And he went, dude, don't treat me like a kid. I said, I'm not. What is it? He goes, dude, everybody knows what that is. That's a 2. And I went, yeah, but is it? He was like, what are you talking about? Are you like stoned or something? I'm like, no. Watch this. Isn't it true? That is just a symbol for a concept we call 2. If you wanted to, you could make that equal to 2, correct? And if you really wanted to screw up a bunch of 3rd graders, you could tell them that's 2, right? And then I asked him, where is 2? I want to touch it. I want to touch 2. Don't hand me 2 things, because that ain't 2. That's still the manipulation of the concept. I want to touch 2. Where is it? Can you imagine a bunch of 5th graders showed up at their class and said to their math teacher, we're not doing math anymore until you allow us to touch the number 2. Poor teacher, she'd be like, oh. What would she have to say? Well, no, you don't understand. You can't touch the number 2. That is a symbol which represents value, right? What we call number, right? You can't actually touch it. It doesn't exist that way, correct? It doesn't exist that way. It exists where? Right? Oh, okay. Look, I can say this to you. Sometimes my freshmen struggle with this concept, but this is absolutely true. Watch my whiteboard. This will make sense to you. There is a huge, monumentally huge difference between, watch, the exchange of fluids and this thing we call that right there, love. Do you agree with me? Huge difference between those 2 things. Now, my freshmen, they don't believe that, right? But by the time I get students who are in their junior and senior year, they've been down the road. They understand what I'm saying when I say there is a monumental difference between the exchange of fluids, what we call sex, and this thing called love. They are not the same thing at all, right? Just saying. They're not the same thing. They ain't even close to the same thing. I got seniors that will say they're not even in the same universe. Not even kind of close. A few years ago, I was asked to hang out with some heroin addicts. I mean, I wear a lot of different hats, and this was years ago. And we tried everything with these cats, and they ain't got no hope anymore. So, you want to work with them? I was like, yeah, but look, it's summertime, and my first daughter, she was 2, and she has to go to the park. You gotta go to the park. I said, I'll meet them at the park. So it was one of the beautiful July summer days. And I'm sitting at the park at the bench with several of these guys, and they're heroin addicts. And I say to them, you know what, I kind of have a sense, I may be wrong. I don't think we like dope. And one of them says, dude, did you not get the memo? You're talking to a bunch of heroin addicts. The only thing we know in our life is dope. You kidding me? I said, I don't think so. As a matter of fact, I don't think that we like drugs at all. I don't even think it's what we want. And again, the guy goes, dude, did you not hear what we said? We are addicts. It is all we want. I said, I don't think so. I don't think, and then I wrote on a sheet of paper, I don't think that's what we want at all. Well, now all of a sudden they're actually listening to me. We're heroin addicts, dude. Okay? We like our reefer. We like our heroin. Okay? That's what we know. That's what we want. I said, I don't think so. As a matter of fact, I don't think you want it at all. They're like, well, if we don't want that, what do we want? And I said, well, and I do like this. And you know how the universe sometimes just kind of works out? And I look over their shoulder past them, and out in the middle of the green field is my little 2-year-old daughter, my Ash. And she's got little piggy tails. And you ever seen kids do this? They're running through, she's running through with her hands out like she's flying, right? And I turn around and I point at my Ash. And I said, we don't want reefer. We don't want heroin. That's not what we want. What we want is freedom. That right there, what my kids got. That's what we want. We think that the dope will get us that because we feel it for a very short period of time. But what do we know about it? It always goes away. Right? What are we saying about this box? Always related to the 5 senses, right? what you can see, what you can touch, what you can taste in the first box, right? But because that's the case, it always sags and bags. It always goes away. Always. What's interesting about the second box is that you can't touch it. Right? Watch how this works. This we will call the physical. Okay? So we'll write that word down. Right? You can see it. You can touch it. You can taste it. You can do this. Right? Physical. Everything we'll put in that first box you can do this with. Right? Over here in the second box though, dude, I want to touch love. See, you know, I want to touch freedom. See, it's like, no, you know, this is what we call meta, as in beyond. That's what this word means, beyond the physical. Metaphysical. Now, years ago, my close pal, our janitor, Ruthie, planted that tree out there for me so that I could make an observation about that tree. Now, there's something interesting about that tree. You can look at it. Which box are we going to put it in? Up here, Ruthie's tree. Well, simple. Can you see it? Can you touch it? Can you taste it? We won't go any further with Ruthie's tree. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and put Ruthie's tree in that first box, won't we? Right? Of course we will. But there's something interesting about Ruthie's tree that one or two of you understood when you were a little kid, and then you've forgotten. That tree is fascinating. What if I wanted it to be a Christmas tree? I like Christmas tree. So all of a sudden, the old man walks out of 303, and I go out in that commons, and I just start screaming at that tree to become a Christmas tree. I need you to be a Christmas tree. You'd walk up to me, touch me on my shoulder, and say, dude, what? Leave me alone. I'm screaming at this tree. I want it to change. I want it to be a Christmas tree. You would touch me on the shoulder and say, dude, you're a lunatic. You don't understand. That tree is what that tree is. You can't change it to be no Christmas tree. Then I would ask you, did that tree choose to look like that? How come that tree does that, like that? And who taught that tree how to grow itself? Like, when did that tree go to school to learn how to grow itself? Whoa, who taught you how to grow yourself? Dude, what is that tree? Well, see, we could bring in a biologist. A biologist would say something really cool. That tree is not actually what you see. That tree is actually, really interestingly, a bunch of molecules that are fit together. What's a molecule? Well, it's made up of atoms. What's an atom? Well, it's made up of quarks. What's a quark? Dude, we don't know. What do you mean you don't know? We don't know. Can I come up with one word for it? How about this? Let's just use this word. Energy. Right? Energy. Where's the energy of that tree? I want to touch it. I want to touch it. Yeah, no, dude, you don't understand. You can't. Does it exist? Yeah. When I'm lecturing in the middle of the winter, there ain't no leaves on that tree. Somebody would say, oh, it's dead, let's go cut it down. You would say what? No, you don't understand. What do you mean? It's dead, cut it down. No. It just looks dead. It ain't actually dead. It's still alive. There ain't no leaves on it. You don't understand. Here in the spring, all of a sudden, it's a strange thing how it happens. All of a sudden, it starts budding again. And then all of a sudden, there's leaves. Well, how does it know how to do that? Right. That's a good question. Well, that's amazing. Yes. Of course, we have another word for Ruthie's tree. We can call it nature, can't we? Right? We use that term a lot, don't we? Nature, right? But we can also talk about energy as nature with a capital N. Do you understand the difference? Do you understand the difference? When we're talking about the energy of that tree, nature with a capital N. Okay? Can't touch it. Okay, well, what about you? Now we're ready to get to Emerson. What about you? Let's just put here, you have a body. We got to put that in that first box, right? You can see it, you can taste it, you can touch it. We won't get any further, right? Okay, that's your body. But what are we going to put in the second box? Back to our conversation earlier. I'm up here giving this lecture. I suppose it'd be a good way for an old man to crank, correct? I could just fall over. Somebody says, uh-oh, the old man is gone. He's dead. If my corpse could talk, it would say, dude, I'm not gone. Now, granted, if you leave me here long enough, I'll decay and I'll go. That's true. But right away after I crank, I ain't gone. Everything's still here. Same arms, same skin, same blood, same brain. Everything about me is still here. What went away? Where did it go? What is it that went away? Well, let's just say it out loud. Come on, guys. It's energy, isn't it? Now, we got different terms for that, right? We can call it soul. We can call it spirit, correct? Sometimes we'll call it mind. Mind. Now, that's an interesting word. Where is your mind? Well, it's in my brain. So if I took your brain out of your skull and cut it open, I'd find your mind. You do have a mind. I mean, I'm assuming that, even though some of the adults in your life will argue you stopped using it a long time ago. Socrates might agree with you. Where is your mind? I know I do have a mind, right? I mean, you gotta have a mind to ask the question, do I have a mind? But where is it? Is it in my brain? Oh, see, you don't understand. Minds are like love, like value, like freedom, like beauty, like truth, like joy, and on and on and on. Then Socrates says something really fascinating, and this blew Emerson's mind. He said, how about tonight? You got to crank at midnight. Let's just call it that. You got to crank tonight at midnight, ready to go bye-bye. They taught you this from the time you were really young when you were at the park and you had to leave and go to the van and you didn't want to go. See, you didn't get to stay at the park forever, did you? You had to go to the van, huh? Right? You were being taught this at a young age and you just didn't realize it. So tonight at midnight, you got to crank. That is to say, at 11:57, we're on the 3-minute countdown and it's done. You're going to flatline and it's going to be over and they're going to put you in a box under the ground. You're gone. You're leaving at midnight. Socrates asks a very interesting question. As the seconds wind down to flatline for you, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Because Socrates has a really interesting insight. He says 3 minutes before LeBron James kicks it, he ain't going to be thinking about basketball. Tiger Woods ain't going to be thinking about golf. Funny thing about 3 seconds before you die. Watch my whiteboard. Socrates says, you won't be thinking about any of this stuff. Why come? Dude, you're about to crank. None of this stuff is going to matter. Right? Three seconds before you crank. Well, the way Socrates says it is, it blew Emerson's mind. The way he says it is this. Most men and women come to the end of their life 5, 4, 3, 2. And what they think in their mind, we all say the same words. The words are, oh my God. The only question is the inflection in the voice. Most people live their lives so that at the last second they go, oh my God, what did I do with my life? Right? Think of the Scrooge story. Do you know this story? The old man, he's got all the money in the world. The ghost comes to him and says, you're going to have to take a little visit. He goes to the past. Kind of makes him mad because he screwed it up when he was young. Then he goes to the present. Makes him a little more mad because people are kind of making fun of him and stuff. He's a billionaire, but he ain't got no love. But it's the third ghost for Scrooge. Do you remember the third ghost? The third ghost is death. Doesn't say a word. Shows him a tombstone. Scrooge's tombstone. And it's at that moment that Scrooge is ready to do what? Beg for one more day. Just give me one to our Socrates. He says it this way. There are a few people, and if you've ever met them in your life, they're important, who live in such a way that when they come to their death moment, they say, oh my God, but the inflection of their voice is different. It's like, okay, I always knew I had to go. And the only things that ever really mattered in life anyway was this stuff. Let's go. Because something really fascinating about this idea of that. Are you ready for this? You can't kill any of the stuff in this box. Kill love. Go ahead, I dare you to try. Kill beauty. It doesn't work. Right? You can't kill this stuff. Well, then what is death? The old man cranks. The only thing that really has died is that. But we already knew that was coming. Well, what about this? Yeah, you don't kill that stuff in a second. Well, that means you don't have to be afraid of dying. Socrates says, dude, you don't have to be afraid of anything except living this life. You'd be afraid of that. I like to say to students, last time you did it, of course it's normal. You had the opportunity and so you took it. Cheated on a test. Last time why did you cheat on the test? Dude, you don't understand. I had to cheat. I didn't have any choice. Why? Because the exam or the test, it doesn't mean anything. But you'll get, I had to pass so people would be mad at me, so I... But in the end, what did you gain? Nothing. So you got a grade. Is that worth your integrity? Is that worth your honor? Is that worth your real life? Now to transcendentalism. Very simple. Transcend means to go beyond. Watch my whiteboard. I think this will make sense. The transcendentalists want to transcend the world of the physical to the world of the metaphysical. They want to spend more time thinking about the stuff in this box than the stuff in the first box. Make sense? In other words, they want to live their life in such a way that when it comes time to crank, they're ready to go. Now, Emerson is very influenced by Socrates' model on the board behind me. If you understand this model, then you will be able to understand the great American transcendentalists. Now, there are three of them that you should write down. Three important writers of the American transcendental tradition. Okay? The first is, of course, Emerson, in many ways called the father of transcendentalism. By the way, he did not like the term transcendentalism. He liked the term idealism. He liked the idea of ideas, okay? But we understand today the concept, okay? The idea is a person trying to transcend that first box to care more about the second box. I get this question all the time. How? Because a student once said this to me, dude, I was raised in wretchedness. My daddy left when I was young, after he jacked on my mama. It was terrible. There was drugs, there was all kinds of wretchedness. I will never do that. And I went, you're not going to have kiddos? No. I am going to get married and have kids, but I ain't making the mistakes my parents made. Ain't no way. And I said, well, how would you know in advance? Because, dude, most people don't go to the altar to get married and go, all right, we're going to do this thing for a few months, and then we're going to jack on each other, have some kids, totally destroy their lives, and then we're going to separate. That's not the way it works. Most people get married, they actually believe it's going to work out. Question, how are you going to be sure that your relationship makes it? And he goes, crap, I don't know. I said, how about this? Listen to what Socrates has to say. Watch my whiteboard. One or two of you will say, this is profound. Socrates says, I can absolutely guarantee you how you can screw up every relationship long term. Allow that to be the thing that builds it. That's it. Build a relationship around sex and I can absolutely guarantee you it ain't going to last. Why? Because everything sags and bags. sooner or later, no matter how drop-dead gorgeous you are, you ain't gonna look like that. And guess what? He's gonna go look for somebody else. But if you build your relationship around that right there, I gave this lecture once to a student. She went home. Her guy that night, he looks into her eyes. I love you. And she looked back at him and said, what does that mean? He's like, what do you mean, what does that mean? No, I want you to tell me what it means. I love you. He got mad. He's like, you know what I'm talking about. She's like, no. I want you to tell me what you think it means when you use those words to me. He's like, come on, honey, just cut it out. Let's go. Get in bed. She's like, no, I'm asking you a legitimate question. What does that word mean to you? She came in the next day to class. She said, I realized I got no relationship with this guy. He's abusive to me. He tells me what to do. I just do it because I want this. I want love. I want acceptance. But you can't get that from somebody else. Ain't nobody give you that. What an interesting concept. Emerson is going to look at the world of nature and he's going to say, this stuff, Ruthie's tree, for example, can actually teach us something. And he writes a very famous essay called Nature. Now let's be clear, this is nature with a capital N, not just lowercase n. He says if you study Ruthie's tree, you'll be reminded of stuff that really matters. The stuff of the second box. To spend your life trying to understand the stuff of the second box, Emerson says, that's the real life. Emerson teaches a young student at Harvard named Henry David Thoreau. And Thoreau becomes the second of our important transcendentalists. Thoreau is so blown away by this idea that he has to go out and try and practice it for himself. And he lives all alone for 2 years. All alone. Just so he can try and figure out if he can actually be a transcendentalist. The third of our transcendentalists we'll study is a cat named Walt Whitman, who's a famous American poet. And he also plays the same game. All three of them we will call collectively the American Transcendentalists. Now, interestingly, they all live very close to each other in this area that we call Boston, Concord, and Whitman's New York. And they all kind of share in common this new philosophy that says, can you live your life a little bit better, a little bit truer? Accepting mistakes, remember our conversation with Longfellow, but moving forward. In other words, trying to find a way to live in the second box. Okay? Now that's your introduction. When we come back to have our next conversation, we'll look then at the actual essay, Nature. And we'll ask a simple question. How do the words on the page explain the stuff in this box? Of course, I'll often say this when I finish. It's always fascinating to try this. Notice how all we ever look at are bodies. Try for the rest of the day to not look at somebody's body, but look at the eyes. That's always interesting. Look at the eyes. Because what? The eyes will remind you there's something behind the body. There's something quite remarkable. Yeah? And if lived well, you can have relationships with people that has something to do with other than the stuff in the first box. By the way, to finish, my heroin boys, they went, I've never thought of it that way. We stone because we want freedom. Right? We got to find it some other place because we're ruining our lives. Right, that's right. So there you go, an introduction to Ralph Waldo Emerson and his transcendentalism, to go beyond, to transcend beyond the physical to the metaphysical. Meta means beyond, right? So to try to live your life beyond that first box. It's not that the first box doesn't exist. Ruthie's tree is there. You can see it, touch it, taste it. We won't get into it. But it's telling you something if you have an ability to look at it in another way. Your life can be more profound, more valuable, more happy, more joyful. Transcendentalism, an optimistic or a pessimistic philosophy? Optimistic, up. Pessimistic, down. Which is it? What do you think? Right? It's a very optimistic philosophy, correct? See how that works? And of course, America was a very optimistic country at the time of what year? It was on your notes. Roughly what year? 1800. Yes, 1800, okay? So when we come back next time, we'll look specifically at the essay Nature. Thank you.